evening, everyone. I come from a call and response culture. Good evening, everyone. There we go. So excited to be with you all this morning. I just clicked by accident, so you got a glimpse into my joke already. I debated actually whether or not I should start with advice from my middle son about, how to psych yourself up that I actually gave him years ago, or a joke from my younger son, something about cows and movies. But I couldn't remember the punchline, so I was like, all right, I'm just gonna leave that out. And I'm gonna skip all that, and today, or this evening, I'm just gonna start with one simple word, and it's sustain. And I'll start with a story. You'll see a common theme here since I do work at Audible. So fresh out of grad school, I worked at a nonprofit in Brooklyn that was New York City's largest provider of environmental education programs. We were based out of an old tennis house in Prospect Park. It was an Olmsted, for those of you that are not familiar with Brooklyn or Prospect Park, it was an Olmsted-designed 526-acre park. So that might sound tranquil to some, but in reality, it was a 100-plus-year-old building with poor lighting and zero circulation. There were actually two entrances where we have to either descend to the basement each morning or follow a narrow hallway up into these kind of tower offices. So I was fortunate enough to be in the tower. It's not as sexy as it sounds. That had one single window, which didn't open. So on the walk up to the office, there was a stenciled art in the staircase with the word sustain in huge lettering. So I looked at that word constantly my first days, weeks, months on the job, but I didn't really connect it to the work that we were trying to do. Some days it felt like kind of a passive-aggressive joke for all the environmentalists, activists, and educators who work there, a reminder to keep pushing and sustain ourselves despite the dismal working conditions and the high bar that we had to meet in order to provide programming to over 100,000 youth and families across the 5 boroughs. So it was the early 2000s and the first time, from my recollection, that people were starting to use terms like green and sustainability. It had previously really been rooted around conservation. But the world was changing quickly, and by the time I left 4 years later, I had led the construction of New York City's first LEED certified building for commercial interiors, launched the chapter of the Business Alliance for Local Living Economies, New York City's first chapter, and produced the largest green festival in Brooklyn that attracted the CEO of Seventh Generation. And most importantly, helped tens of thousands of youth across the city understand that they had a voice in shaping their environmental conditions within their neighborhoods. So I took this knowledge to the Brooklyn Navy Yard and became part of the executive team that led the largest redevelopment of the Yard, the Yard had seen since its decommissioning in 1966. And that was across projects adding millions of new square footage affordable to small businesses, fabricators, and at the time, green manufacturers. Many of them had been priced out of the surrounding burgeoning neighborhoods. I was committed to telling that story and finding ways to ensure that access to those jobs and the below market real estate would be attainable to commercial and industrial tenants, and ensuring the impact of this commitment that it could be sustained long after I left. The legacy of the Brooklyn Navy Yard was of a former naval facility that built the nation's mightiest warships, the USS Maine, Missouri, and Arizona, the bookends of World War II, and home to Rosie the Riveter. But what if the legacy could be how the Navy Yard was able to sustain the level of access it trailblazed in the 1940s. The fact that it employed 0.1% of the entire American workforce, or that women and people of color got their first opportunities there. The countless stories about how Americans were able to sustain during this time were captured in oral histories accessible in a powerful exhibit that I hope helped to open in 2011. To sustain means to strengthen or support physically or mentally. But I also believe that sustain means that you have created an enduring legacy. And I can't help but think of storytelling. So today I want to ask, what stories do you want others to tell about your company, your brand, and more importantly, about what you actually believe in? What stories make up your legacy? What will be sustained for years after you've moved on, your product evolves, or you have a new competitor in the marketplace? As for my story and what sustains me, it's actually uniquely intertwined with Audible's. In 2007, Audible chose to move its headquarters to Newark, New Jersey to help catalyze the city's redevelopment. It was an intentional choice to use its own business growth for the benefit of the city's residents and small businesses. Like Audible, I too had come to Newark with a purpose. I wanted to be part of that revitalization. I wanted to combat inequities and work directly on efforts that could right the wrongs of the past in a city that reminded me of where I grew up in Brooklyn. I came to lead the city's Economic Development Corporation under Newark Mayor Raz J. Baraka, a progressive mayor and a leader with a profound vision, who was born to a family with an incredible legacy of activism and deep roots in Newark. Throughout my tenure, I had the privilege of working with Audible as a collaborator before even joining the company. I saw how they were determined to set a standard for what a company can mean beyond what it does. To explore the most innovative and disruptive ways for economic development to actually be in service to the local economy and local residents. When Audible arrived in Newark, they incentivized their employees to live local and made direct community investments. So when I was asked to join 3 years ago to head up urban innovation, it was an easy choice. Making Newark the beneficiary of Audible's business growth has been a priority, really an obsession of ours. Audible moved to Newark with 100 employees, and we're now the fastest growing private employer in the city. We offer our employees $500 a month to live in Newark to increase their economic footprint in the city, and after-tax subsidy to be used towards their rent or mortgage, and a bunch more. I won't go through a laundry list of corporate efforts, but here's one really good example of what I believe sets Audible apart. In 2020, merely 3 weeks into the pandemic, we launched Newark Working Kitchens, where we purchase meals directly from dozens of local restaurants to ensure that they can keep their lights on and their employees working. The meals were then distributed to people experiencing food insecurity across the city. And in the early days of the pandemic, there were so many. To date, we have funded and fundraised $15 million for this effort, sustaining over 200 jobs and 40 local local restaurants. Most importantly, we provided over 1.5 million locally sourced meals for the most vulnerable across Newark, focusing on homeless shelters, people who were in quarantine early on and unable to leave their homes, senior centers, and more. Food pantries were hit hard. Food insecurity was at an all-time high, and restaurant workers were struggling. We heard directly from business owners that but for Audible's efforts through Newark Working Kitchens, they would not have sustained themselves through the pandemic. Audible, through Newark Working Kitchens, was a lifeline. In fact, the state of New Jersey took our model and created a grant program they called sustain, and serve, which provided nearly $60 million in funding to restaurants across New Jersey to prepare meals for people in need. Is my time up? I hear it ringing. We took our learnings from Newark Working Kitchens, and in 2021, we launched the Newark Artist Collaboration. As one of the largest employers of creative talent in the entire New York City metropolitan area, we already have a strong connection to the creative community. We know that this industry was also hit particularly hard during the pandemic, with limited public funding, particularly hard during the pandemic for artists. So we identified over 20 local artists and arts organizations to work on one of the largest series of public art installations in our neighborhood of downtown. We leveraged Audible's product and talent and coupled these installations with audio storytelling from the artists, so they could share their own stories in their own words and illustrate the power of voice. To date, we've invested over $1 million in the Newark Artist Collaboration. More than a beautification effort, the Newark Artist Collaboration reinvigorated dark alleys and courtyards, created more well-lit streets, and amplified the stories of artists across the city and the communities in which they're based. This year, we launched efforts to attract more startups to the city of Newark with a focus on women founders and founders of color. Because we know barriers exist to opening a brick and mortar, and that women founders and founders of color access less than 1% of venture capital funding nationally, we took action. Audible is currently offering up to $250,000 in grant funding for startups who expand or relocate to Newark. This work just builds upon our investment in Newark Venture Partners, a $100 million venture capital fund and accelerator that our founder, Don Katz, founded, and in which Audible serves as an LP. Over 60% of those portfolio companies have a female founder or founder of color. And when we think about investments, our internship program is top of mind because there's no more greater investment than the next generation of talent. Our Future Leaders program is a paid internship and college scholarship program for Newark students. For more than 16 years, we've provided underserved students with access to economic opportunities and tools to overcome systemic barriers to education and employment. It's a high school internship program. High school. Many corporations don't offer that. And it extends and follows them, what we call Audible Scholars, through college. The interns leave to college, so that equates to about a 6-year paid work-based learning program that supports students from age 16 all the way to their first job. During their internships, high school juniors and seniors from Newark high schools explore a wide range of professional interests and supportive workplace environment. They attend seminars and lunch and learn sessions on topics related to Audible and technology and their future careers. They have access to company-wide events like our speaker series with guests such as President Biden, celebrity chef Marcus Samuelsson, Essence editor Mickey Taylor. And all interns learn how to write, record, and edit their own podcasts in the process. Speaking about learning the power of their voice and telling stories. Since the program began in 2007, 100% of our interns have been accepted into a 2- or 4-year college. Thank you. We know that in order for this work to be sustainable, it can't live in just one department within the company. As the world's largest provider of audiobooks and audio entertainment, Audible is a home for storytelling. So we wanted to bring our expertise and talent to bear through our first permanent site-based audio installation this past spring. The City of Newark commissioned and installed a monument of Harriet Tubman in a park across from our headquarters. The monument, titled Shadow of a Face, was designed by New Jersey artist and architect Newark Cook John and features a permanent audio installation that Audible curated and produced, written by Newark native Pia Wilson, and performed by Newark native, are you seeing a theme here? Queen Latifah, and a talented cast. Monumental, Harriet Tubman and the Newark Liberation Movement takes listeners on a journey through Harriet Tubman's life, the work of the Underground Railroad, and the history of free Black communities in New Jersey. To make sure people everywhere could hear and be inspired by this story of liberation, we made the audio experience free to listeners around the world. So I think at this point, you're probably all thinking, yeah, so any corporation can throw an exec up there that can kind of espouse all the social impact work and highlights, but I hope by now you also see our work is an inventive and disruptive approach to traditional philanthropy. We use our people, our product, and our position to advance economic empowerment, racial justice, and equity. It is core to who we are and what we believe in. Indeed, this work sustains us as a company and is ingrained in our culture. Our corporate principle, called Activate Caring, doesn't just inspire us to care about the communities where we're based and to create opportunities for those without privilege. It actually also is a part of our hiring pledge and our annual performance reviews. Imagine having a portion of your annual increase tied to how well you serve others and make an impact across the entire company. In a world where individuals own their own narratives and author their own stories, who you are as a company is just as important as what you provide. So thank you for listening to my story of how an innovative corporation landed a recovering nonprofit and quasi-governmental leader. The plot is simple, really. Audible's values were clear to me. I feel reaffirmed at the dinner table, talking about my day with my children and knowing the legacy I'm trying to leave behind. And every parent wonders whether your children are actually absorbing any of those gems that you're always sharing in hopes that they'll want to go on to do great things. And so I feel incredible pride that this week, my oldest daughter, who graduated from law school in May and recently passed the bar, is getting sworn in to focus on international and humanitarian law. So that I had a closing picture that was like the big thing to end on. I was gonna take a quick pause so you could be like, oh my gosh, she has a child that's old enough to be an attorney? Yes, I do, yes, I do. But anyway, who you are, what you do for the world, and how you show up to inspire others, that's what lasts, that's what inspires, and really anything else is unsustainable. Thank you.